Okay, you should see me and my beautiful face made for radio on Ustream. Okay, and I'm gonna get a plug-in for my lap or my iPad, or it's not gonna stay powered. It's not gonna stay powered up. Holy moly. I'm live on Ustream right now, but I haven't hooked up Facebook yet. Yeah. All of our fans are seeing my stumbling and bumbling. Yeah? The real. It's real. Look, he just picked his nose. Yeah. Crazy people. I want to make sure I'm powered up. Okay, I'm going to go Facebook Live. I'm going to add the description. 360. Yeah, yep. All right, we're all done there. We're gonna go live, people. Do you see the starting a live video for Facebook? You see that? Woohoo! Okay, how does my Ustream headshot look? Okay. All right, good. I'm gonna hang up the phone and off we go. All right, bud. Bye. All right, Ustream fans, hello out there. We've got our show. It's going to start up pretty soon. We're on Facebook Live. Hello, everybody out there at the wonderful Ritz-Carlton at the Women's Summit for the Colorado CPA Society. We're in the lobby area outside the conference, and wanted to just make sure that you see me in real time. Let me know. Shout out to me on Facebook Live and take a look at what we're doing here. Also take a look at KUHS Denver.com. We've got our live Ustream broadcast there as well. And today's theme is we're going to talk a little bit about accountability and setting expectations. It's hard to be accountable for something if those you work with haven't clearly stated what are you responsible for. What do you want me to be accountable for? How do you want me to align myself to what you expect of me if you haven't shared that with me? If you leave it up to me to guess, I might guess the wrong way. Now, in some professions or in some sports, it's pretty easy, right? I pass a ball. I want to score, so maybe I'll cut to the basket. Those are expectations that don't necessarily need to be communicated every single time we go down the floor to share a play. But when we get into the business world, it makes it a little bit different. The business world is one where we have time to figure things out. It's not an immediate response that we need to make. So that's kind of the focus of today's talk, is being accountable, but with a set of expectations that you clearly understand. Now, at the program here today at the Society, they're talking about issues that are unique and of concern to professionals in the CPA Society, in a public accounting firm or finance, and you're an accountant, but in particular about those issues that are facing women. Now, I've had some great conversations with some of the speakers that are going to be on the docket today. In fact, before I forget it, let me grab the flyer for the session, so you have that image in front of you. We have the, here's the COCPA 2018 Women's Summit right there. Our Ustream makes it go. It's one thing about FaceTime I just don't get. It's backwards. It reads it backwards, but that's okay. It's talking about offering a unique opportunity to connect female CPAs from across all industries to discuss issues relevant to women. Right now, the talk that they have right now is with Kimberly Ellison Taylor. Kimberly is a colleague of mine. I've met Kimberly for the first time when I was in Maryland speaking at the National Association of Black Accountants. I've done that several years. Kimberly is a great representative for the AICPA in talking about the women's role, and especially the women of color's role in the industry of financial services, and in particular being a CPA. But Kimberly also brings a unique perspective to the table. She is very much into systems. She has a master's degree from Carnegie Mellon University, and she currently works for Oracle out of Maryland in the global accounting and strategies area, and she is the immediate past president of the AICPA. So Kimberly and I, we go back a few years, so I love talking to her about the not only the things that influence women in accounting, but also what influences women of color in accounting. And let me make sure you qualify something from my opinion. Women of color, to me, what that means is not just African American women, but women of any color. Because as I've learned recently, well, not just recently, I've known it all my life, but it's become glaringly clear to me that men have to be accountable for the expectations that women have for them. Here's an example of that. It's one thing, guys, to open a door for anybody that you see has a need for you to open the door. Maybe they've got packages that they're carrying and they need help with that door to be open. Well, that's obvious. That's really obvious that you need that. But what if a woman needs help with something that's not so obvious as that example? And they exist. When you hear words being spoken by other men, the other day I was with a gentleman who is in a position of trust and leadership, and he called a female colleague sweetie. Now, I don't know that he saw the expression on the face of the woman when he said that, but if we do, guys, stop, take a breath, and pause to understand what is the expectation of that individual when they heard you say that, and how are you to be accountable for that? Should you, in your pause, reflect and come back and say something to that person and say, hey, hold on a minute, I meant this in the most endearing and pleasant way and positive way when I use that term. And also be vulnerable enough to admit to the fact that, that's how I grew up. That's what I was all about, sweetie, darling, cutie, all those kind of things. Those are not bad words, but in the wrong context, they can mean different things to different people. And begin to sculpt out a framework of what defines you as an individual in their world. So if you're a person of responsibility and one who's got a position of trust, and you set a set of expectation based on verbal cues and standards, it might be a limitation for people to perform around you. So that's our setup for today's show at 360 Performance Talk. I'm your host, Lowell Whiteman. We're here on KUHSdenver.com, bringing the best of web-based television and radio for you to understand what are your expectations in being accountable for delivering your best performance. That's what we're talking about today. It's great to be here at the Ritz-Carlton. It's a wonderful facility downtown here on Curtis and 18th, I believe, right down the hub of downtown, or a little on the east side of downtown. So for those of you who are with me today, good morning or good afternoon, Paul. P. Young, PJ, that's good to see you here, buddy. It's interesting. I deal with a lot of different athletes of a lot of different ages, and many of them have to deal with being accountable for giving their set of expectations for a game that they just played. So they're going to get interviewed, basically. They're going to have a reporter come in. They're going to interview them on any number of networks or publications that might want to interview them. And in that process, over the years, things have changed. And one of those changes is that the female reporters are allowed in the locker room. Now, there have been times when I've been in the locker room amongst these athletes for different reasons than to get an interview. I'm not there to get an interview. I'm there to process and recount the game with a player of mine and go through the performance checklists. And they play a little game with the reporters, the female reporters that come in, because many times the athletes are not done cleaning up. They've been busy. Some of them haven't even taken off all their gear yet, especially in football. You have a guy in his football pants and t-shirt on and barefoot in the locker room because he just hasn't had a chance to get things processed. And there's other guys that on cue, they're walking or they're at their locker with their towel wrapped around them, and they see the female reporter coming, and they're just being a pain. They're just being a little boy that wants to play games with his big sister. Now, I say it that way, understanding that sometimes it's not meant that humorously or cavalierly, but the towel drops, and they want to see the shock factor. They want to see how much did they get into the head of that female reporter. Now, there's nothing masculine about what they did. It's very revealing. So I want to make sure we're clear on the expectations that are set in the locker room for reporters is to get the job done, is to get the report and get a great interview. And we are here at a wonderful place that has had on many occasions sports teams from all over the world be here at this wonderful environment. We talk about our 4 segments of our show every week, where our first segment is about mindset. Well, we're talking about the mindset of setting expectations and being accountable. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the environment. So I'm going to address environment just real quickly regarding my story about a reporter coming into the locker room. Well, the locker room, it's an environment that has certain expectations, right? I'm cleaning up. I'm finished with the game. I'm going to go take a shower and wash off the sweat and dirt and whatever, and do my thing, and then move on to the next thing I need to do, which is probably get on a bus and go to a hotel like a Ritz-Carlton. It's with those sets of expectations that we need to make sure we're considering our environment when we do that. I don't subscribe, even though I laughed when the towel went down and he got his reaction from the female reporter in the locker room, and it might have been an older athlete that says that in that gesture was sharing his opinion about how he wants to handle female reporters in the locker room. I think that's a bit immature. It doesn't reflect the realities of our world in sports and entertainment. There are a lot of things have changed over the years about what's going on. So the mindset is, as a reporter coming in, male or female, I mean, look, I don't need to see your package dangling in front of me if I'm, a reporter coming in. So if I'm a male reporter coming in, I don't need to see that. I'm here to do the job. My expectation is that you're going to give me an interview because that's what you do. And you had a good game, or you're the person that was given to me as a spokesperson. So the expectations are set pretty clearly in the locker room, but many times are in an attempt at humor, not well respected. So one of those things that we create when we set expectations and we want to try to be accountable is a level of trust. If you perform in a way that is frivolous or juvenile, in the way that the towel dropping incident happens, and it's happened more than once in my presence, that's for sure, you have to ask yourself, one, why am I here? Did I understand the expectations clearly enough? And did the environment give me some cues as to what I should be doing? And maybe I would have known it was coming and I could have avoided it or moved to a different place. Or of course, unless you like that thing. I don't know if you like, the towel dropping. I know there's been more than my fair share of occasions walking into the locker room. And listen, locker rooms over the years have not become one of my favorite places to be. But it's a great example of setting expectations and what's accountable, because there are people moving in and out of that locker room that have a very clear mission. They're there to pick stuff up as the players, remove their equipment. There's a strategy and a method going on. There's so many different layers of activity within a locker room after a given contest that is a really great place for me to dwell with regard to setting up a mindset about our topic today, which is, being accountable and setting expectations. So make sure you consider your environment when you're doing making a plan for setting expectations and holding people accountable to certain types of behavior. Now, in the business world, like what we have here today at the Ritz-Carlton, we've got the Colorado CPA Society presenting the Women's Summit for 2018, and they're going to be talking about any number of issues. The first one that they talked about, that I'm going to shift gears a little bit and relate this to mindset development in business. The first speaker was Amy Cohen. She's a local Colorado author and consultant. She presented on the 7 deadly sins that sabotage success. Now, I'm not going to share much of her presentations, but that would not be fair. She's much better equipped at it than I am. But one of the things that she talks about there is about expectations and being accountable. You know, when you're trying to pursue a career, you have a set of expectations you're putting in your mind. You're putting this vision about what's my next job, what is my first job, how do I go about preparing for that first job? Are there things in my college that are going to help me with that? Well, if there isn't, go look for it, because setting expectations is also one of the first steps towards setting a plan of how you're going to get ready for that interview, get ready for perhaps you got interviewed, you got a job offer, and then taking that job offer. There's all different layers of expectations that you're going to set yourself up for to be accountable. Now, when you start interjecting people into that scenario, maybe you've got a mentor that you work with, maybe you've got an advisor academically that you're working with, or maybe there's a career counselor through the university if it's your first time job, or maybe it's not your first time job. You're talking to a spouse about making changes. Right now, I'm going to transition between mindset and setting those expectations in your mind, your own mind, and bringing them out. Look, I'm as much a person who doesn't think about others enough to share. Now, I'm going to share that vulnerability with you. I will empathize with anybody that gets on a path, really starts to focus on the path. They're setting expectations for themselves. You're trying to be accountable to the expectations you've set for you, but you haven't shared it. It's hard to engage other people in the skills you're going to use once you've set that mindset and you've established expectations and you want to be accountable. If you don't share it, it's hard for anybody to support you if you don't do that. So whether the skill set is listening skills, it's visualization skills, it's breathing, meditating, all those things maybe to get prepared for an interview. Maybe it's getting prepared for a sporting contest. This weekend is the opening up of a lot of college football seasons. By the way, let me push out a shout out to Coach Bobo at Colorado State University. I'm glad to see him back on the field. It's kind of cool. Now, I know the mic's not like this, but it's kind of cool to be driven to practice in your own little golf cart. But I hope that's a laughable incident that is short-lived, because I want to see him mobile, and my best wishes to him and his getting his health, raising his health to a level that he enjoys, and he can share his great performances and expectations with his family. So I'm glad to see he's out in the field. He got out to practice for the first time after being in the hospital this week. They open up with Hawaii tomorrow at Colorado State. Now, that being said, there are games all over the country, colleges opening up their seasons. Well, there's sets of expectations. There's expectations for the freshmen, first NCAA football game, whatever level football they play. I also want to say a shout out to Phil Sersha and Coach Austin Gilmore down in Texas in opening up their season. My coach friends at UNC, University of Northern Colorado, and the guys out there doing their thing at UNC, as well as my colleagues out at University of Washington, UW. One of the things I want to try to do on September 1st is make it out to the Auburn game. Washington University versus Auburn. I think that's in Auburn. That will be a great contest for both teams. And not only the game itself, but setting the expectations up front. And one of the dangers or cautions I give to coaches that they can use, the skill of painting the picture in the now, staying in the now, because you think as a coach, man, if we do really well against Auburn, what does that mean? Where do we go from there? And we've got the next week is a lesser competitor from the standpoint of what's on paper. I mean, Auburn's a pretty stout team on paper, but that's their opening game for both teams. We'll wait and see what happens, but that could set a set of expectations for both teams going forward for the rest of the season after that first game. I know that the press is probably all over getting ready for that game and set their own expectations about the reports and what they want to say or not say about that. So there's a lot of different contests going on. There's also the sidelines, and then outside the sidelines, outside the stadium, a set of expectations that are going on. I'm going to focus in on Ohio State and Coach Myers. What do you do with that? I mean, he's handling a situation. I'm not going to presuppose anything about whether he knew anything or didn't know anything or what should he have done or not done. There's more than enough people taking their shots at Coach Meyer in saying what he should have done or shouldn't have done, but none of them were in that situation with him in the moment. So I think it's important to have expectations if you're going to be one who's examining those circumstances, to be very patient with your examination and what you have to say about that set of circumstances that Coach Meyer was put into with regard to one of his coaches. He's a football coach, and this time of the year, his attention, his expectations are about each day and each practice, and then the next practice after that, and preparing the X's and O's and watching his staff get ready for those contests. Not only the first game of the season, but every game for the rest of the season, and he's not in that. He's, I think at this time, he's suspended. I'm not sure of all the details, but as it relates to our topic for today and setting expectations and being accountable for them, I'm sure that Coach Meyer's got more than a strong list of expectations and what is his role in being accountable to his position as a head coach in a Big Ten and Division I school. And within that, I'm going to use Coach Meyer as an example of just sharing when you find yourself in those situations where stress is a part of the feelings you're going through. Utilize time for yourself. I mean, I know it's hard. You're going to get demands on your time when someone is in the spotlight like that. It's hard to get away from the cameras and away from the press. But if you can, find a place for yourself that you can find time to reflect on you. The situation you find yourself in is only going to be handled ultimately by you. Yeah, people have their own opinions about things, but when you sit down to manage the expectations you have for yourself, it's not about anybody else outside of you. It's all about you and what you can create as a energy within yourself. And some of the skills that we've talked about in the past that you can utilize to help you manage that are your breathing techniques. Getting your breathing under control. Through the nose, out through the mouth, and making sure that, I've got one more thing I'm going to look for in my bag here that I'm going to pull out, is that you're able to prepare yourself to meet those expectations with the best definition of who you are. Now, Coach Meyer, he's in a tough situation. Now, let's back away from that and just look at any coach starting any season, because we've got high school volleyball programs starting, we've got fall baseball starting across the colleges and high schools around the country. I'm working with a girls volleyball team and specific athletes on this team in a high school in northern Colorado, or actually north of Denver. It's not northern Colorado, north of Denver. And they all have their own set of expectations, and they put themselves in this framework of how they're going to be accountable. For example, every player that exits the locker room, regardless of their sport, has an expectation of how they're going to look, what their image is, the vision of what they have in their head about a certain play or a certain movement. They're going to constantly be aware of those things. And that's before they even have a word with a coach or a sharing of thoughts or gestures with their teammates. You've probably heard the phrase, you're your own worst enemy when it comes to evaluation and meeting your own expectations. We're going to talk in a minute about mental conditioning, because you need to let yourself kind of have some freedom and forgive yourself. Because if you set expectations for yourself that are too high and you're not meeting those, you become your own worst enemy. And as I say that, I want to make sure we remind ourselves that setting expectations, you don't always meet them. You might set them too high. I've said on a number of occasions that if you want to really be your best and you really want to be a champion, imagine a sundae, whatever flavor, chocolate, vanilla, caramel sauce, chocolate sauce, whatever. You got this great sundae, big cherry on top, that ultimate goal at the top. My phrase is, if you strive for the cherry on top, you may not make it, but the worst that might happen is you're going to fall into whipped cream or the chocolate sauce. And that's not so bad. So setting high expectations, but not without remembering that if you fail, the failure can be a great tool for you to address those expectations when you are being held accountable in the future. It's from that practice of dealing with failures that we become not only better and create memories, neurologically create memories, muscle memory, conscious memories of what needs to be done better the next time. It's an expectation to deal with failure that not everybody's prepared to do. Look at the pros. Right now we've got baseball happening. I was honored to have the Toronto Blue Jays hat given to me last night after the Blue Jays game was played against, I think, the Baltimore Orioles. And I got from number 18, Curtis Granderson. So shout out to Curtis this morning. Hope travels are safe and you're doing well. But failure is an everyday occurrence at the pro level right now. And yet it's the ability through the season to this point to manage those failures so you get to postseason. There's still plenty of time for many teams to get into that, either a wild card situation or actually win their division and get into the playoffs. So it's an interesting time right now to reflect on being accountable and having high expectations for yourself, because if you don't, you may not win the World Series, or you may not make it to the NCAA championship at the end of the season. So setting expectations early and dealing with failure with the skills that you're prepared to deal with that you can control. You control your breathing, you control what you see, you control how you think, put it in perspective of the expectations that you not only have for yourself, but you have for others. Because if you don't do that, you don't connect all the pieces. I have my own expectations, I know how to be accountable for that, I know I control my actions, my words, my thoughts. Put all that connected together, it's very difficult to map out a plan for success if you don't have the realization of how those thoughts and feelings connect to the expectations that you set for yourself. So with that being said, I'm going to just take a moment and show everybody here. This is one of my favorites right here. It's Germ Block. Germ Block is a product from AvCare, and you can go to avcare.com and take a look at their website. I encourage you to do that. Now, the reason I have this is because I'm all over the place. I'm in locker rooms, and you notice right here, it's a kind of a lotion look to it. This is a bacterial cleanser, hand sanitizer for your hands. Now, the interesting thing for me about AvCare is that it feels like a lotion. It doesn't have that residual impact of drying my hands out. And I'm outside all the time in the gardens, and we're in Colorado, which is, we're always talking about being, take fluids in and hydrate. So anything that allows me to hydrate my hands and still get good sanitary cleansing of it is great. Now, that being said, I talked to the local health professionals in our counties around the state of Colorado, and everybody around the world will agree that washing your hands with soap and water is the best thing to take care of bacteria. Now, that being said, then put the AvCare Germ Block on afterwards. So my expectation is to wash my hands because bacteria needs to be rubbed off. It's the friction of the cleansing in addition to the soap, and then the water rinsing the bacteria off that really makes it work. And then put on a Germ Block barrier, literally, as it says, Germ Block barrier on your hands. That is a great way to protect yourself from all those nasty things that are out there. And quite honestly, for me, my expectation for teams and coaches is to put those things in place. Here, look at this thing attaches to the bag of the players. Or there's a carabiner version. If you go onto avcare.com, you get the carabiner version. And have it connected to your bag. Look, as a coach, I don't need my players sick. I don't even need them feeling like they got a tickle in their throat. I'm going to make sure that we do as much as we can to prevent germs and bacteria to get into our locker room world and knock out our players. So have an expectation about health and wellness and use germ block. All right, so we're into our next segment. We're at about the half-hour point, so we're going to be talking a little bit about mental conditioning. Mental conditioning. You're listening to 360 Performance Talk. I'm your host, Will Whiteman, and we're talking on KUHSdenver.com. Please tune us in there. If you're looking at me on Facebook Live, thank you very much. Hello, good to see you. So the mental conditioning piece, remember that talks about the environment. I mentioned a minute ago about environment. And look, I'm sitting here in a lobby outside of a conference at the Ritz-Carlton in downtown Denver. What an environment that is. It's awesome. And right now, I believe on the agenda, if I might pub the agenda a little bit, they are in a panel, they're in a panel discussion that is called, let me just see here, I think it's called mentoring, M-E-N, mentoring. So we've got some great panelists of men and women to talk to the audience, the women accountants from their COCPA, Colorado CPA Society members, talking about just mentoring, you know, and what does that really mean? Now, also, let me make sure I point out again my friend and colleague Kimberly Ellison Taylor. She's on the docket as well. She started speaking. Actually, she's on right now. So she's on right now until a little after 11. Kim is with Oracle, and she has a great history with the AICPA. She was a director, past director and president. I guess I should probably mention as well the two main sponsors for the CPA Society, Colorado CPA Society, are Deloitte and ACM. Anson Collins Mitchell LLP is the platinum sponsor. So that's right there. Get my smiling face in there. All right, play a little game. So this is I'm a very big advocate and a male professional that wants to be held accountable by any woman, a female out there about how I approach them, treat them, address their needs, and what I can do. As I said to you before, you know, I had a colleague that said in front of me to a woman, called her sweetie. I don't think nothing negative about it. It just came out. I mean, his frame of mind, where he's from, his expectations of what he's learned in the past, just came out of it. So the environment for him, and I think others that I've been around, doesn't have any impact on them. It's part of who they are, how they've been socialized. So look, in addition to the awareness we need to have about who we're with, what we say, when we say it, needs to be there, needs to be heightened. But come on, let's just relax a little bit. The mental conditioning you need to do in any environment is to just ask questions, shake somebody's hand, have eye contact. These are skill sets that we talk about. Remember, we talk about mental conditioning as a product of what you create as a mindset going in when you start your day, what do you expect, and then going into the skill sets that help you manage that mindset to deliver it in the highest quality way possible in whatever the environment. So mental conditioning, when you're in an environment, you should go through the checklist. Am I prepared? Do I understand the expectations? How do people want me to be accountable for my actions? Well, of course they want you to be accountable, just like police officers want you to be accountable for when you drive your car, of the expectations of the rules of the road, those kinds of things. Putting practical realities on ourselves in whatever environment we're in. Now, right now, I'm talking with kind of a guarded tone and volume right now. Even though I'm in this lobby, there's nobody out here. They're in this session doing their thing, but I still feel conscientious in this environment to manage myself. Now, I'm exchanging that to you so that you get a sense of awareness of that as well. Look, we are in a world that is constantly bombarded with stimulus. You've got your phone, there's tweets and beeps and sounds that come off of that will make you aware of maybe something you need to be accountable for because you set an expectation with somebody else that you're going to return a phone call or send an email or text, whatever the case may be, or tweet or Instagram, the list goes on and on. So you see, we've got all these different stimuluses that influence our lives to throw us off track. Look at squirrel. Yeah, see, there it is right there. I get distracted. And you've got to be aware of who you are in the space you're in. If you're truly desirous of delivering your best in any environment. Now in the business world, it's not as fast-paced as in the sports world because the environments are pretty static. Football field's football field. Sideline, sideline, locker room's locker room. Boom, there it is. Whatever the time frame is, college, high school, pros, whatever, you're there for that moment and you know precisely what the objectives are. Offensive player, you know what your expectations are, how you're supposed to be accountable. If you're a receiver, you're running a pattern as precisely as you can. You're a running back, you're starting to stay on your feet, moving downhill, you know, faking. You have certain strategies you know you're going to use because that's the expectations of the coaches who coached you, and more than likely, the desire and expectations you have for yourself. In the business world, yeah, you got some time. You sit down, you go to a conference. I mean, I was multitasking when I was sitting in the conference. Had my iPad out, I was going through my routines, and I'm still trying to listen. But I don't know that I was necessarily meeting the expectations of the speaker. As a speaker for myself, if I flip myself into her role when she was talking, I'm looking at, are their eyes up? How are they sitting in their chair? If their eyes are up and they're sitting in their chair, are they looking at me? Or are they slouching in their chair? Those are things that I look at to set my expectation and to hold myself accountable as a speaker to get them out of their iPad, to bring them to me and my attention. Now the environment might have something to do with that, and it helps to be able to be part of that, but I can't control it. I can only control what I can control. So one of the things I control is saying good morning to Garrett. Hope things are going well, and you're going to have a great weekend this weekend. Let me point out to you, Mr. Grayson, that being in the moment, staying in the now, head on a swivel, making something happen with your feet are all things that I expect of you. Now, can I influence that? No, I can't. Just like I can't influence that as a speaker on the podium, somebody sitting in the audience not paying attention to the wonderful words coming out of my mouth. So take control of what you can control in that moment and being aware that you are in control of certain expectations you have for yourself. You know you can do the things you've been trained on the practice field. You know you can do the things that are in the playbook to get it done. Those are things you can control. The degree of the control is also yours as well. So when you have that push of your skill set towards a specific expectation that you hold yourself accountable for, like you hold yourself accountable for making the reads as quickly and as early as you can. If they're not there, they're not there. Then you got to adjust and adapt and make something else happen. The phrase, as you know, is make something happen with your feet. In basketball, it's ball fake. Make something happen with a ball fake. In baseball, it's be a small target. Give them a BB to throw at. If you're a hitter, that has its own inherent risks. Being accountable for that means you put your body in the way of a pitcher getting a little irritated at you and actually throwing at you. Because if he knows that you're making a small target for him, that's a challenge. And he has an expectation to hit the strike zone. Maybe also to hit you, especially if he's got the count in his favor. Well, that's not a whole story. The point is that when you're in an environment, take the environment in, absorb it, understand where you're at in that environment, and execute the expectations that you can control first. Because if you mix your head up with the expectations of others in that moment, not only will you have a chance of failing, but you also fail for the expectations and the accountability you have for others. Be true to yourself first. Have the personal swagger. Be aware, self-aware of you first in that environment so that you can deliver on the expectations that you have for yourself and maybe satisfy the expectations of others, but no guarantees because you don't control that. You control you. You control how much snap you have, how quickly you set your feet and get your hips set, how well you get your pre-reads up and see the things. As you know, Mr. Grayson, the one thing that we've been told is throw the ball to the person with the same colored jersey as you. That's a very trite and sometimes sarcastic statement. But the relevancy to what I'm saying today is that's an expectation you have of yourself. So you put into play the environment, the conditions, and how that's going to influence you hitting a person with a pass of the same colored jersey. Well, that then takes into count. What do you know about you and what do you control? Well, I'm not going to beat the point up too much, but it's a great example, especially with the sports analogy, about how environment can impact your meeting your own personal expectations, which you should do first, and then being accountable to the consequences that brings once it's delivered. So if you make a pass completion, awesome, great job, right? Everybody's clapping their hands. You don't make a pass completion, and there's no interception. You get back to the huddle. Now in that moment, that's a very small environment. Yes, it's in a big arena, but you're in this environment. What you say to that team and those team members in that huddle will set the stage, because you're controlling it. The words coming out of your mouth, you control. What you say in that moment will deliver confidence and expectations with confidence, so that everybody sees that we're on it again. Forgot that play, we're moving on, we're going to make it the next time. Those are also aspects of setting expectations and being accountable. They're very important, and the environment has a huge influence on that. And I'll give you, let's go swing back to skill set. Your eye contact in that moment with every single player in that huddle is going to make a difference, especially given the circumstances. Down and distance. We talk about down and distance. Well, there's a situation. You can communicate an energy and an expectation in that huddle with eye contact. That's simple gesture of skill in that moment, in that environment. Hey, Coach Fraser, I miss you, man. I wish I could talk to you more, so I'm glad you're here with me today. You're getting ready for a weekend as well. I want to make sure that an offensive line coach I respect a huge amount because of what you share and teach young men as linemen. Because, as Jeff said to you, Derek, they do so many things. They got to read the defense. They got to maybe even have a pre-read, knuckles on the ground, all these different signals. Then they make that play and they come up and they're moving feet and hands and body simultaneously to accomplish delivering power into a particular spot to get an outcome that they desire, that they expect. If they've been accountable to themselves in their position and delivered what you've asked them to deliver, Derek, it should work, right? Well, it doesn't always happen because you got the other guy on the other side that you don't control. I don't control him in that spot, in that moment. I'm doing the best I can with what I have right now. So my hat's off to offensive linemen and what they do in the moment that they have to deliver it. And more importantly, the coach who sets the mindset at the beginning of the game to remind those young men about how great they are and just being out there and trying to deliver those movements and get them excited about those moments. And that if there's a failure, just be there, just stay there. Because again, it's a wide body, right? So Derek, it's a wide body. You're still in front of it, stay in front. If everything else breaks down, stay in front of it. Because the ultimate expectation by you and the quarterback is they don't get to the quarterback. Or the other expectation is you get to the second level and you open up a gap. And if I don't open up a big gap, I'll still stay in front of him so the running back can get where he needs to get as much as he can get in that moment, in that environment. Now, football is not the only thing that we can share here. As I said before, baseball is coming to an end. We got playoffs coming. And there's different environments that are going to create different settings. More crowd is going to show up at different games when it's a key thing. The Rockies have a key scenario coming up in a week or so with the LA Dodgers coming into town. That series alone could be the separation between the Dodgers and the Rockies on who goes to the playoffs as the winner of their division. The Rockies have been coming through with home runs to end games in the ninth inning, which they've needed. I think they're still a half a game out of first place with the Diamondbacks, but they got beat by the Padres, who were in the bottom of the division a few days ago, and then they won a game against them the other day, so they're half game out. But it's baseball is one sport that I don't know that an environment has as big an influence on the outcomes of a game that, say, football, basketball, high school and college volleyball. There's so many different settings that impact the mindset of a player in a given moment about what they're doing. Now, as I say that, I want to remember that the environment, that this micro environment that's on the sidelines with the coaches between series and football. Coach Fraser, again, I'll refer to you because when I watched the offensive line coach and the offensive lineman, it was interesting to me how much time from the time the defense took the field and the offense came off did the coach end up with the players. Now I'm going to do a broad thing here because the expectations of the players is, hey, we get on the sidelines, the coach is going to show up, he's going to get the dry board, he's going to draw some stuff out, talk to us about some things, ask us about some things. And yeah, it was really intriguing to me how quickly Coach Fraser would show up given a situation that happened prior to that in the last 4 downs. And I really loved the timing. Sometimes you get there fast, sometimes you get there slow. But the expectations of the players wasn't necessarily the same every time. Now, I think, Derek, you would have to prove me right or wrong on this. I think you had a strategy on how quickly you showed up. Or maybe you would see the coach single out a player before he addressed the group. Those will also have an impact on what the environment you create, because you can create an environment by setting expectations as well. So I'll leave that kind of murky a little bit, but I think, Coach Fraser, you know what I mean, and how you play the dance and the game in the environment on the sidelines between series, that it's a powerful tool. And the environment that both you create or that you were given have a large impact on the outcomes and the degree of excellence someone meets expectations. So as I say that, we're getting to the we've got about 15 more minutes. Our last segment is on performance outcomes. And remember, performance outcomes is not the medallion, it's not the ribbon, it's not the trophy. That's not what I'm talking about. Performance outcomes is process-oriented. It's the process you use to approach your expectations so that you can be accountable to a degree of excellence that meets your expectations. So you see there's kind of a circle there. I set up expectations. I want to tackle somebody. I want to complete a pass. I want to catch a pass. Those are expectations. In those moments, especially when your number's called as the primary, if you're a receiver. Or if your side of the line is called upon in a given play to deliver certain expectations, and you're being held accountable for that. And if you don't make it, if you're an edge blocker and you don't make it, then somebody's going to get pounded. And you might hear about it later. Now, those are tough times to be resilient enough to come through that, not meeting your expectations, one we call failure, within that environment. So what's your first thought? Is it put your head down? Oh, I'm dejected. Well, here's where coaches can come in. Pick it up. Get your head up. There's nothing wrong with failure. What's wrong with failure is if you don't address it and deal with it and use it as a tool to get better. Now, resiliency within that moment is the measure of how quick you get that back, how quickly you adjust and adapt those expectations to get yourself back into the fold, thinking positively, positive self-talk, talking to yourself about, okay, I did it less than what I wanted to. The expectation was higher. I didn't meet it. Now what should I do differently? Because it could repeat itself. Could get the play called again the same way. You have another chance to rectify it and make it better. So setting expectations pre-game, pre-contest, pre-event are important. What's even more important is your expectation and how you're going to hold yourself accountable to when it doesn't quite go your way. In the sports contests, you got to do it quicker. You have to be resolute very fast. Minutes, sometimes seconds, for you to get back on track and not dwell on what didn't go right. In the business world, you've got a little time, but the consequences can often be much more detrimental to the livelihood of people. The feelings, the emotional impact could be much more lasting than anything that you might experience in the sports world, regardless of the level of the sport, amateur or pro, or whatever level of professional sports expertise you have. Because in the business world, I have clients in the business world that they make decisions about, let's say, pricing the product out, and they don't consider the expectations of others, the customer that might buy it, the future customer, and in the marketplace, what it's saying about that pricing strategy. So someone might set a pricing strategy, has the power to do it without consideration of others' expectations, thereby pricing themselves out of the market. Too expensive. And they wonder, well, why? We've got a quality product, we've got a quality service, why isn't our price getting attention? Well, maybe you haven't sold the value. Maybe the expectation of value isn't properly communicated. So they don't know about it. They don't know why they should be spending this much for what they think is this much in quality, because you haven't value added the quality statement. You haven't shared with anybody why is it worthwhile for me to pay that much money. In the marketing world, there's a principle called the Cadillac principle. Cadillac spent a lot of time and effort in setting expectations of the quality of Cadillac. So the name Cadillac gets a certain economic bounce to it. They get more for that name. Ritz-Carlton. There's an expectation when I walk in the door what I should see. Now, no deference to any other brand or identity, but if I were to go to a Fairchild, I think it's Fairchild, a lesser known environment, I won't try to name off another hotel chain, but it's not a Ritz-Carlton or Hilton or Hyatt. I hope you're getting what I'm intending here, is that the expectation when you hear a certain word or phrase said, it's the level of quality or the level of performance from it is not going to be as high. If I said to you, Derek Jeter, what would be your impression of quality? Now, Derek Jeter's not playing baseball anymore, but if he was across from you at a business table, and you're the CEO of a company, and Derek Jeter is sitting across the table from you, and maybe you're not even a baseball fan. Maybe you didn't even know who Derek Jeter was as a baseball player, but then somebody told you in preparing your expectations for the meeting, this is Derek Jeter. He represents All-Pro, World Champion, blah, 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 blah. All the titles, character, all these things. Expectations change. Without knowing that, Derek Jeter is just Derek Jeter. And in some cases, maybe Derek Jeter just wants to be known as Derek Jeter so that he can share and validate expectations in his ability and quality as a business executive and not as a baseball player. So you see, the environment has an impact on not only what you do and how you do it, but how you handle the failures, how you handle starting the meeting and continuing with the meeting and the interaction with these people. And it's all about a process. The performance outcomes you expect should be process-oriented, so that if I'm going to meet with a Derek Jeter, I'm going to find out about who Derek Jeter is, whether I know who he is or not. And if I do, it just adds to the flavor of my expectations. The degree with which I address Derek Jeter might be higher challenges within that environment. So if I'm negotiating across the table with Derek Jeter about a business that he either wants to sell or buy, maybe it's an athlete. Maybe now I'm across the table with him because I represent an athlete that he wants to contract with. And maybe I need to know about baseball. And I need to know about what he knows about baseball, because we're now talking about trading a player into his team, into his franchise. But the quality is still there. The expectations of quality are still there. So the environment is the end result of performance, of the mental conditioning piece, but then the process of which you interact in that environment is hugely important. And if you don't do your work up front to understand what are the expectations in this meeting, who am I accountable to? Well, I've got Derek Jeter in the meeting. I'm going to be accountable to him perhaps. Or maybe there's somebody who doesn't have the same profile as Derek Jeter that I'm going to have to be accountable to. I better know that as well. Now, that being said, there's no way that you're going to know every single detail that needs to be known that can impact the results that you're looking for. Because things happen. The unknown happens. You can't be held accountable to everything. So when you're looking at a scenario like what's going to happen this weekend for a lot of individuals, both professional and amateur, you're going into it. You're wondering, what are my expectations for myself? What do I intend to do for myself? Now, some may call that goals. Expectations is one way of saying it, but there's goals, objectives, things that you know you want to achieve. Now, I'm going to add something here to the players that are trying to deliver what coaches expect of them, what employees are trying to deliver for the CEO, the CFO, the president, whatever my boss expects of me. It is hard for you to meet those expectations with a process, a performance outcome, through processes, if you don't have an understanding of what you want for you. Understanding what your expectations are for you and the processes that you're going to use to deliver those free you up to deliver beyond what a boss might expect. Because I would challenge anybody. I'll bet you your expectations of process for you are higher than what anybody else has for you. Now, a caution here is making sure that you ask questions of those you report to about what their expectations are, because it would be uncomfortable, awkward, if your expectation is over here and that's what you're going to perform to, and their expectation is over here and there's no intersection of the actions and the performance. You're out of sync. Believe me, in the business world, from my experience, that has happened far too often. There's a disconnect. Here's what I expect for me as a person, but here's what my boss, my client perhaps, my boss and my client expect on what I should be doing, the process I should be doing to deliver the highest degree of outcomes from that process. Well, therein lies one of the biggest dilemmas, which is one of the reasons why I'm called upon by both sports teams, sports performers, as well as business executives and CEOs and organizations, is there's the gap. I bring them together. Ultimately, I have no ownership in what and how they do it. What I have ownership is the process and the communication and delivery on those expectations for those who are accountable for delivering those. And there's a gap. Too often, employees, players have an expectation of what needs to be done that's not intersecting with the boss or the coach. And regretfully, we find it out during the contest. When we're sitting across the table with a Derek Jeter, or when we're on the sidelines watching my offensive line take snaps and miss a block, have a step that's not in the right place, the footwork is not correct with the hands and the punches that they need to deliver to execute the block. And you kind of wonder, what in the heck is happening? That's not what we trained during practice. Why is that happening? So coaches, executives, bosses, when the player comes off the side to the sidelines, the player comes into your office, the employee comes into your office, before you begin to share your dismay about not meeting your expectations, ask them a question. What did you intend to do with that behavior? Why did you do that? I want to understand. I want to get a deeper understanding of where you were at. And then bring it into your expectations. It's what Stephen Covey calls begin with the end in mind, and the listening skill about being empathic about your listening. Seek first to understand before you ask to be understood. So coaches, ask the players so you can understand them before you ask them to understand you. Because if you don't, in that very moment before the next series happens, you've got to get that clear understanding and meet the expectations so that you can clearly understand how to adjust and adapt accountability. Because it might not be just one blocker. Maybe it's a pair. It's that you need to do a little chip before you can go downfield. Don't forget to chip, because if you don't chip somebody, you're not helping your tackle, so that you can go as a guard out to the second level and get things done. There are lots of different ways to approach any given problem or situation. And I don't profess to have a magic wand to delivering the highest degree of quality outcomes. But I do have the insights from a lot of experience in using tools like my technology, which I just touched upon, to stay in touch with things. But that's also can become a distraction. So when you're putting all the pieces together, your mindset for the day, because you're looking at your expectations that people have of you as well as you have of yourself, so that you can measure up to be accountable in those moments to deliver the highest quality actions that you can. You look at the start of the day and the mindset you created, and who you are, why you're here. You're answering all those questions, and you're coming at it with a very strong, positive, optimistic feeling. You've removed all negatives. Negatives are gone. The only thing that's left is you and your skill set to deliver. And you move into, okay, what skills am I going to draw upon? Well, you're going to be prepared to draw upon any skill. Your breathing skills, your focusing, your visualization, your ability to mentally get hunkered down and tightened in on what you need to do. Whether you use meditation or whether you use any number of different things to get you into that great set of mindset that utilizes the skills necessary. And then you move from there into the mental conditioning, the environment. What is the environment doing to me? I know that the players like Garrett Grayson and Derek Frazier, when we went down to Alabama, can you remember that? There were 4 jumbotrons, one in every corner of the stadium. I mean, the pre-game crowd was as big as what we were going to face for the entire game. That was a huge set of noise and movement, and then they're projecting all these accolades on the screens about how great Alabama was. And here we are, CSU, for the first time in the Alabama, the Crimson Tide Arena, just overwhelmed. Got to get over it. Take the environment's effect off the table. Move away from that. Control what you can control in the moment and deliver. Deliver on the expectations that you know are yours because you have owned them. You are accountable for them. No excuses. No regrets. Because you're a mind right to be game tight. Mind right to be game tight. And that has nothing to do, being mind right has nothing to do with anybody but you. And that doesn't mean you don't listen to people. Because listening and respecting who's there, respecting your receivers, respecting your linemen, respecting your D-backs, and all the things that go into it, or respecting your pitcher as a catcher to hit the spot when you need to hit the spot. Setting expectations clearly for yourself first is important. And then sharing those expectations with others is equally as important because you can't ask them to support you if you haven't shared what you expect them to be accountable for. Look, I'm grateful for this opportunity to be here today in the Ritz-Carlton, talking to you on good old FaceTime and Ustream. You're listening to 360 Performance Talk. I'm your host, Lowell Whiteman, broadcasting on KUHSdenver.com and the wonderful surroundings of the Ritz-Carlton, Denver. I want to thank you for the opportunity to do that. I wish you the best for the day, and by all means, do something that you can control in the moment that you do it, with the kind of expectation you have for yourself that you can deliver it because you prepared yourself to deliver a degree of performance that you alone can be accountable for, and you're not afraid to share it. Hey, have a great day today. Thank you for being here with me. I'm going to say goodbye to my Facebook friends first. Have a great day and a great weekend. For those of you out there, Coach Frazier, good luck. Garrett, enjoy. My Ustream followers, I'm going to switch over here a little bit and get my camera moving around. Hopefully we stayed online. I'm trying to get that. Okay.